Welcome. Our story begins in the year of our Lord, 1770, when the continent of Australia was discovered by one Captain James Cook. Cook hailed from Yorkshire, and was an aristocratic dilettante under the employ of the Royal Society of Britain on a pleasure cruise through the Pacific. His hobbies included Scrabble, and sticking British flags in land that he came across while on holiday. Cook's ship the Endeavour weighed anchor in a small bay, and he disembarked to survey the exquisite vista of unspoiled Australian bushland. Would you look at that? It's completely uninhabited. Well, actually, mate, completely uninhabited. Cook declared Australia terra nullius, which is a Latin expression meaning roughly, nobody lives here, or more accurately, all your base are belong to us. He then informed King George III of his amazing discovery. King George was one of Britain's most beloved and inbred monarchs, known chiefly for his provocative crotch-oriented portrait poses, losing the war to some colonial rabble headed by some joker named Washington, and his endearing habit of talking to trees. Hello? Who is this? Hello, your majesty. It's Jimmy Cook here. Oh yes, Cook. How are you? Have you discovered anything? Well, your majesty, do you remember the New World? Yes. Well, I've discovered a new one. A new world? Yes, your majesty. Well, what's it like? Well, it's largely flat, inhospitable desert, interspersed with forested area, which happens to be teeming with poisonous spiders, snakes, and man-eating crocodiles. Sounds rather unpleasant, Cook. What do you think we should do with it? Well, goodness me. Cook, hang on. I'm getting another call. Can you hold on for a moment? Well, of course, your majesty. Ahoy, hoy. Hello, your majesty. Lord Bithington here. Bithington, you old scoundrel. What can I do for you? Well, your majesty, we've got a bit of a problem with the convicts. Really? What problem is that? Well, I'm afraid there's far too many of them. How awful, Bithington. Well, can't we do something about this? Like, hang them all? We've tried that, sir. It appears that people prefer to steal bread and hang rather than to starve to death. Well, suppose we ship them all off to America or something. Yes, about the Americans, your majesty. They said they don't want them. We tried sending them some tea to sweeten the deal, but they threw that into the harbour. Heavens above! Throwing tea into the harbour? Clearly they've lost the plot. I think we'll have to have a war with those ruffians soon. But the convicts, sire. We have to put them somewhere. Bithington, old son, I've just had a brilliant idea. Don't worry, I've got the perfect solution. Cook, are you still there? Yes, your majesty. The reception is a bit dodgy out this way, though. Listen, Cook, about your new world. I've got a use for it all of a sudden. Oh, really, sire? Yes, Cook. We're going to send all those ruddy convicts out there and turn the place into a hellish prison. Doesn't that sound spiffing? Cook thought it was indeed a spiffing idea. The man charged with establishing this wondrous new land of thieves, prostitutes, and murderers was named Arthur Phillip. He was a naval officer, a sullen man with a bit of an attitude problem, and a passion for having people flogged at the slightest provocation. His assignment was a practical joke amongst the higher-ups in the Admiralty, who were all hoping that the churlish Philip would perish at the hands of his human cargo. They had not reckoned on Philip's zeal for floggings, which he ordered regularly for even the most minor of crimes, and which he also prescribed as a treatment for many common ailments. On the back of the institution of flogging, the nascent colony flourished, and it was not long before settlers and explorers struck out in all directions, before promptly dying of starvation, thirst, and at the hands of the hostile natives who weren't there. Early Australians were surprised, in fact, to discover that this uninhabited land had a surprising number of people uninhabiting it. In the 1850s, the gold rush brought wealth to many pioneers, but also brought many Chinese to the fledgling nation, who were not liked on account of their thoroughgoing work ethic, which made everyone else look kind of bad. The only other noteworthy episode in Australian history during the 1800s was the career of the bushranger Ned Kelly, whose raffish charm, pragmatic clothing sense, and penchant for cop-killing made him something of a folk hero. Kelly and his gang were eventually surrounded by the entire Victorian constabulary at Glenrowan after popping into the pub for a beer. After a bloody siege, Kelly single-handedly attacked the police and was shot some 78 times, but, being Irish, refused to die out of stubbornness. He was captured and hanged, since flogging had become passé by this time. In 1901, Australia became a federated dominion of the British Empire and elected its first Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Edmund Barton. The new government passed all sorts of important laws and ushered in an era of enlightened tolerance and forward-thinking policies. Things were great for a while, but then, in 1914... Hello? Hello there. Ah, g'day mate. Haven't heard from you bloke since Federation. How's it going? Yeah, we've had a spot of bother actually. Crikey, what's the trouble, me old China? Well, there's a bit of a war on. We were wondering if you wouldn't mind handing over a generation of young men if it's not too much bother. Oh, no worries, mate. I'll send 'em right over. Yeah, jolly good show. Many Australian troops were sent to Egypt, where they were briefed on their assignment to take the Dardanelles from the Turks by their British commanding officers. Now listen up, chaps. I'm going to tell you our highly sophisticated plan, so pay attention. Oh, righto. Essentially, we land on the beach, whereupon we charge up the gentle slope of a small hill, and give Johnny Turk what for. That sounds bloody easy. Let's go, lads! In keeping with British military intelligence at the time, the slope turned out to be not quite as gentle as anticipated, nor was the hill quite as small as the briefing had implied, and far from obediently being given what for, Johnny Turk insisted on firing incessantly at the invasion force with machine guns, and the whole operation ended in an abysmal defeat. Meanwhile, on the Western Front, Australian troops fought doggedly in the trenches while British generals commanded with stupendous incompetence, for which they received innumerable medals, commendations, promotions, and all-round kudos down at the Officers' Club over brandies and cigars. Good morning, chaps. Are you ready to hear the plan? Is it a new one? Oh, heavens no. Don't be absurd, you colonial wretch. The plan is the same as always. Well, why do I need to bloody hear it? Well, it's an extraordinarily complex plan, as you know. Essentially, when I blow this whistle, you all leap out of the trenches and charge across no man's land in wave after glorious wave, while the Jerry's gun you down like cattle. Are you coming? Oh, goodness no. Who would stay behind and blow the whistle then? Anyhow, after you've all been slaughtered, we count your carcasses and send an impressive body count back to the propaganda office, so make sure you all die out there like you're supposed to. Follow the plan, gentlemen. Well, what if we don't get shot? Well, don't come back. You're of no use to us alive. In fact, if you return without dying, you'll be shot for insubordination. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but how do large body counts win us the war? Do you understand nothing, soldier? More bodies mean we're fighting the hardest, and that means we're going to win the war. Don't you read the papers? But won't we run out of able fighters if our body counts are always so high? No, you cretinous fool. How absurd! When the Jerrys hear how large our body counts are, they'll have to counterattack in order to break our record and prove that they're fighting the hardest, and our plan is to make our body counts so astronomically high that the Germans simply won't be able to beat us, and hence, victory is ours.